gotta understand that you may not be able to change your friend's behavior. And I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna even change the way I said that, which is that you are not going to be able to change your friend's behavior. You are not. It is up to your friend to do that. Is every conversation like a one-man show that's starring your friend or this other person? When friendships feel more like an exhaustive battle for airtime, it might be time to learn how to navigate those choppy waters of a narcissist's ego. By the end of this video, you're going to learn effective strategies for managing your emotional well-being and setting healthy boundaries in a friendship that's dominated by narcissistic behavior. And dealing with a narcissistic friend can be challenging, absolutely, because their behavior can often be manipulative, self-centered, and it can be very emotionally draining. So here's some strategies that can help you manage those types of relationships and friendships. First and foremost, you got to dive in there. You got to set those boundaries. You got to establish those clear boundaries about what behaviors are acceptable to you and what aren't. And this can be really hard because what happens is a lot of relationships, friendships, and so forth start by you being enlisted by the narcissistic individual. And enlistment, and I've got a video on that. I'll put that towards the end of the video if you want to check it out. About enlistment is what they identify individuals, in particular traits in those individuals, that they can bring them into their sort of interpersonal circle. And part of enlistment is that you might have a sense of weak boundaries, or you feel bad if you have to be assertive about your boundaries and about what you're comfortable with. And this is completely normal. Doesn't mean you're defective, doesn't mean you're broken or anything like that. Don't let that stuff get in your head. So that isn't true. Setting boundaries can be really challenging, particularly with individuals along the narcissistic spectrum. And when you identify those boundaries, what you'll tolerate, what you won't, and could it be how they speak to you? Could it be how they touch you? Or could it be that they don't? Or could it be that they don't show up in time, or they don't text you back? Or, so depending on what your boundaries are, what are your friendship expectations? And you have to know what those are and know what those boundaries are. And you have to stick to your boundaries as best you can, even if your friend tries to push or manipulate you. And this is really common, that individuals along that narcissistic spectrum have those narcissistic traits. They're going to make you feel bad about asserting your boundaries, because boundaries usually are for you, not for the individual. However, they are positive for the relationship as long as they're healthy and adaptive boundaries. So if you text somebody, for example, and texting is such a huge psychological problem for so many people because we have this implicit expectation we're going to text and someone's going to immediately respond to us. Well, people have stuff going on, right? Whether they're your partner, your best friend, a coworker, whatever. Everybody's got stuff going on, right? And maybe they're at a hot dog cart ordering a hot dog. You don't know. But when you text them, you got to allow a certain time for them to text back. Okay. So in the context of a clear boundary, and let's say you text your friend and they're not texting back like in a really long time or something like that, ask them about it. And say, hey, when I text you, it really seems to take you a long time to text back. Is there a better time for me to reach out, or whatever it may be? And you're getting that feedback, but you're also communicating a boundary saying that, you know what, when I reach out, I just appreciate something that comes back. And if they blow you off, unless something is for them, which a lot of narcissists do, is that they're very opportunistic, that they will only text you back when it fits them, fits their needs, fits their want, then you have to ask yourself, is this an appropriate friendship or relationship for me to be in? And you have to ask yourself that question. The next one, how about limiting your exposure? And you got to spend less time with those friends that make you feel bad. Or if it becomes just too much to handle, it's just too overwhelming. They expect too much. They're pushing or breaking your boundaries. They are just sapping too much of your energy, because you got to know that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being and mental health. You have to prioritize it. No one else is going to. I don't care if it's your mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin. As adults, you have to prioritize it yourself. It doesn't mean you're alone in the world. Doesn't mean you're empty inside. Doesn't mean you have no value. What it means is that you have to take care of yourself. You got to put your mask on first. If you're on the plane, everything drops down. You got to put your mask on first. Why? Because if you try to put the mask on everybody else on the plane and there's no oxygen, you're going to pass out and you're not going to help out anybody. And you have to take care of you first. It's not selfish. Because in order to be effective to others, you have to take care of yourself. So limiting your exposure to someone who is a psychological and emotional drain is pretty important for you to do for your mental health. Now notice that I said limit your exposure, not cut them out of your life forever, right? It's not cutting, the relationship paper in half. That's not what we're saying. We're saying limit that exposure. It's that you don't have to spend as much time with them because they're so draining, because they take a lot of your psychological energy, and it's really hard for you to do that. Next, you want to avoid fueling their ego. Woo! This can be tough because you may have been chosen by that individual because you feed their ego. You give them that attention and validation that they feel they need in order to justify their fragile sense of self, their fragile ego. And you got to try not to feed into that need for that constant praise or admiration. And this can be really hard because sometimes the other person, that narcissistic individual, is going to be like, well, you're not giving me what I need later, and they're going to dismiss you. And that becomes another issue. Are you okay with unhealthy friends, lovers, partners, coworkers removing themselves from your interpersonal circle? And I understand that it can be really, really hard, and that can be really scary. But if you're fueling an unhealthy aspect of somebody else that is coming back on you and creating problems for you, and it's sapping your emotional energy, and it makes you feel bad about yourself, makes you question your own self-worth, I think you have to evaluate those relationships in your life and what you want out of them. It goes back to boundaries, goes back to exposure, all of those things. And, focus on neutral topics when you do interact with them. And it's okay to redirect the conversation away from them from time to time, right? You have to determine the degree in which to do that. It's always easier to split and be like, forget it. They're not in my life, they're gone. Or the other side is, all right, I got to have friends, so I'll just tolerate it. So both of those options, splitting is so unhealthy because what happens is that you drown in 100% of the water. That is not healthy for you. That is not good. It's not healthy or good for any of us. And we don't want you doing that. No, we don't. So you want to avoid fueling that ego because it just perpetuates the nightmare. Now, the next one, be as assertive as you can. When necessary, I want you to assert yourself in a calm and confident manner. This goes back to those boundaries. It goes back to limiting access, right? Feeding the ego. These are all cumulative, right? They're Lego blocks, man. It's putting those Lego blocks together to create that sturdy final product. That final product is you. So we're building on it. And being assertive, doing it calm, confidently. You don't have to be irrational. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be passive aggressive. It's being assertive. Now, when you are assertive, recognize that most narcissists are going to engage in manipulative tactics, which can include like a guilt trip. But when you stand your ground and respectfully, you see their point, I see what you're saying, but you maintain your own sense of self-respect. That is assertiveness. Assertiveness is that you don't have to take from someone else and make them feel bad to get your needs met. Narcissists often use passive-aggressive or aggressive tactics because they often want people to feel small so they feel big. So it's really important to be assertive and clear with these individuals. Again, this can drive them out of your life. But the question is, do you want someone in your life who utilizes passive-aggressive and aggressive tactics so they feel more superior? I mean, where's the empathy for you? But you have to have empathy for you too. That's critical. And next is managing those expectations. You gotta understand that you may not be able to change your friend's behavior. And I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna even change the way I said that, which is that you are not going to be able to change your friend's behavior. You are not. It is up to your friend to do that. So my clients have to elect to work with me. If they're coming in because their spouse, their mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, boss, whoever, told them to come see me, that's really unsuccessful. It's not going to work. And I think that it's managing your expectations and recognize what works is that your friend is going to have to make the choice to challenge and change some of their own behaviors. Now, you can't make them do it. Now, you can have a nice, clear, and confident, assertive conversation about it, that you worry about them, and using those I statements and trying to connect with them, that you worry about them, that this particular behavior seems to be leading them down a road that looks pretty negative to you, that looks pretty self-destructive, and talking about that. Now, understand that individuals along narcissistic spectrum don't like to hear that. They're going to take that as criticism, that you are attacking them and all that other stuff, which is why you have to be assertive, clear, and confident and direct, but also manage those expectations. Your job is not to take the responsibility for another adult's behavior. It's not. Because if you take that on, those are distorted expectations and they are unrealistic because you just can't do it. You just can't. As much as you may want to, you just can't. Now, if you want to stay in the relationship, you have to accept them for who they are. And this is up to your personal choice. It's probably not a healthy choice, but I don't know. I'm not sitting there with you. If you and I were sitting, right next to each other watching this video, I'd probably say, hey, that guy seems to know what he's talking about. But after I said that, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, can I accept such and such for who they are? Can I accept them for where they are? And acknowledge that you actually have a lot of control and power over how you respond to their actions. Allow yourself to make those choices. Make them calmly, not out of rage, not out of frustration or anything like that. Make them calmly. Think about them. Process them. You know what? When such and such says this, I'm going to do this. And you may not do it the first time, second time, third time, whatever. Plan to do it. And eventually you will start to take steps towards that. Visualize yourself doing it. It's so important. Human beings, we got this whole frontal lobe thing. It's really neat. And we need to utilize it. Part of utilizing it is visualization. We have to visualize ourselves engaging in particular behaviors that are healthy and good for us, and using communication, nonverbal, verbal, that supports us being treated with respect and us having healthy relationships, which becomes contingent upon how much we'll tolerate and what our expectations are and what we feel we deserve. And that's really tricky. Lastly, I want to talk about you got to know when to walk away. And this can be really hard for a lot of individuals. If the relationship is just on a regular basis, consistently bringing you more stress than joy, and your friend refuses to respect your boundaries or change their behavior, it may be necessary to distance yourself from that person or even end the relationship altogether. And this can be really hard because, again, that component of enlistment, which I'll put the link here so you can see it for that video, but that component of enlistment, you were sort of chosen for a reason. And it's usually not because of your assertiveness. It's not because of confidence. It's because of a degree of uncertainty you have. But that doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Not at all. That's just at that time, this individual saw that in you, and they knew that they could utilize that, manipulate that for their own sense of narcissistic superiority, in which they feel needs to be fed on a continual basis. So what happens is that that's just where you were at the time. Maybe you've been that way your whole life. I don't know. But if it's something you want to change, you can absolutely change it. And a mental health provider can absolutely help you do that. And I think talking to someone and exploring those things can absolutely help you. But when we talk about these relationships, knowing when to walk away, that goes with clear boundaries. That goes with setting expectations. That goes with how much disrespect are you going to tolerate. And knowing these things about yourself is critical. The more you know about yourself, the more empowered you are to make those choices. And you absolutely positively can. And just remember that, dealing with a narcissistic individual, friend, lover, coworker, whatever it may be, can really be emotionally taxing. It can really, really sap your energy. But it's essential to prioritize your own well-being and try to surround yourself with supportive relationships that are healthy, that encourage your growth. It's okay to put your mask on first so you can breathe and help others get their mask on as well. Hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.